Welcome to the Carpool Chat, from our house to the State House, the commute that no one ran for. I'm Representative Sarah Stalker, and today I am joined by my colleagues, Representative Rachel Roarx and Representative Tina Bojanowski. We are three legislators that are all based in Louisville, and we commute on a regular basis to our jobs in Frankfort. And we want to share a little bit about some of the discussions that we have along the way to and from Frankfort, about policy, but also about just things in our everyday life that come up. So, welcome. This is our last episode that we're going to do to kind of round out the 2026 session. And so, let's start with, actually, let's kind of go in the order of operation. So, we are just coming back from the 10-day veto. This is our very last day. So we were in session, we leave for 10 days, we come back for the last remaining 2 days, the 14th and today, the 15th, which is called sine die. Constitutionally, we have to be done with session. What did you all do in your 10-day break?
Oh, go ahead, Rachel.
I slept. I watched Bondi Rescue, Australian lifeguards on Bondi Beach saving people. Apparently it aired between 2006 and 2024, so many years of Bondi Rescue. They got deal from everything from shark attacks to drownings to lost kids. It's the full gamut.
And this is how you unwind. This.
When you're, okay, I think the best way I can describe it is, I was sick, I had an infection, I was so tired, and of course also just coming off session, also so tired. So finally I'm on my antibiotic, and I would just lay in bed and watch this Bondi Rescue show. Every episode I could get my hands on, I watched. And it's almost looks like when you're a sick kid and you're just laying on the couch watching America's Next Top Model. Just binging
You're just
something.
zoning out, yes.
Yeah. That was me.
Oh, I spent my time in the garden. So it was yard cleanup. I mulched up some leaves. I turned some compost. I moved it out of the compost food bin into the compost pile. I chopped up some of my wood in the wood chipper, which is a very gratifying thing to do. And, it's just a time to unwind, and you can't control much when you're here in Frankfort, but I can control, to a point, what my garden looks like. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that's a really good kind of mental health, just finding myself again, right? I love those days, because not only were we on veto period, I was on spring break from school. That's right. So I did go back to school on Monday of this week, and I go back again tomorrow. So, so that's what I did. How about you, Sarah?
Well, a couple of things that I did. I really got a lot of rest in, which is really needed, because those last 2 days before we go into that veto period are really stressful. We are here late nights. We did do a filming before, but that was when we were on a lunch break. So really all the craziness had not ensued at that point yet, as far as legislation that started flying out of the chamber. So what did I do? I tried to control the things I could control. Yeah. I did some gardening, did some yard work, took my daughter out to do some things to get ready for prom, because that's happening, and so that was exciting. And I just, again, tried to do things around the house, little projects that I could see start and then finish and feel okay, I got something done. And I needed to do those things that were they were important to get done, but mindless. Do you know what I mean? Where I could just put myself on autopilot and just chill, because it is your brain, the mental gymnastics that you do while you're here is real, I guess, is fair to say.
The phrase touch grass has come up several times about just grounding, being, getting outside, getting back into your circadian rhythm, and, just putting your bare feet on grass, and really just literally,
and which we did when we went for a nice walk yesterday. It was the weather is always gorgeous this time of the year, thankfully for us. So we, at least when we take breaks, we go outside. Yeah. And we did. We walked around in the grass. You and I did, at least barefooted.
And to tell you something else I did is I ordered more plants than I should have. So I think they're starting to be delivered today. And then I'm kind of hoping to plant as close to Derby Day as I can, so that we don't have a freeze. So I've got a bunch more perennials. I'm starting a new bed. It was going to be 8x8, and then it was 8x12, and now it's 8x16. So that's going to be a good project for some of my free time coming up on the weekends and whatever. So
well,
it's the garden.
It looks beautiful. I give it credit.
So let's talk about really quick, before we jump into some policy that we want to kind of circle back to, I want to make sure that people understand a couple of things about what happens in these last 2 days after we come back from the veto period. So any legislation that's passed now after the veto period is not veto proof. Who wants to talk about that and what that means?
So anything that we pass yesterday and today, if the governor vetoes it, the veto will hold. Now, the governor cannot do a line item veto for anything other than the budget. So he would either, if there's one bad part in the bill, he would have to veto the entire bill or not veto it. And sometimes it gets a little tricky. Most of the time, the things that go through are kind of benign. The president of the Senate was talking about swinging bridges in a committee meeting. You know, so it's kind of those last minute things that need to get done. But anything that we passed yesterday and today, the governor could veto it and it would hold.
And it is important stuff. Some of it, varying levels, but not controversial. That, I guess that's usually that's the thing to express, because what people need to understand is that as bills continue, as they were coming out, the governor can veto it. But then, Rachel, what happens? We come back and what do?
We override
We
it.
override them because there is a super majority in the House. And so
all the bills that were vetoed were overturned yesterday.
Yes. Right. And then so we have to go back and do that cycle of, do we want to override the governor's veto when we come back, or do we want to uphold it? So those are just some little kind of nuanced little pieces for people to understand if they're watching on how the process works.
I have another kind of thought. So I looked up, so sine die is what we call the last day of the session. So I looked up the meaning. So it's Latin and it means without a day. And the meaning is that session has adjourned indefinitely. So it's like a final end. Now, we know that we'll go back in session on the first Tuesday of January of 2027. But unless there is what we call a special session, but officially it's known as an extraordinary session. And I came in 2019. Since I came in, we've had 3. 2019 was something about pensions, but it wasn't the sewer bill. 2021, we came in on a special session for COVID, and then 2022, we came in for disaster relief, so maybe tornadoes.
Tornadoes and flooding, right?
And flooding, yeah. So, you know, we will either meet over the interim for non-voting issues, so more informative, or we the governor could call us into a special session if need be. So the other thing that I thought was interesting we were chatting about today is we do a session every year. This is a 60-day and it's the budget year, and then it's a 30-day session next year. But we used to, all the way through 2001, we only had session every other year. So, you know, I think sometimes there is an appetite. I know there is, because they file a bill often to allow us to decide to go into session. But I think it's great that it's kind of concise and we've got these number of days that we have to get it done. The longer you stretch it out, the more kind of ambiguity there can be in the system, the more, I don't know, I think it's a really good thing just to stick with the number of days we have now.
I have always found it too, just from like a governmental implementation standpoint of like, how do you ever let the agencies catch up with the new laws if you don't give them time to implement or get, you know, data back to you?
Point.
So taking a break in the legislative calendar actually gives the administration time to respond to the bills that we pass. So I think that's important, and also sometimes like there are unintended consequences and you need to realize those and then come back and fix them, but that's an important part of the process along the way.
Yeah. Okay, so let's circle back to some legislation that changed a little bit from the last time that we maybe talked about it. Let's start, Rachel, with House Bill 9.
Senate Bill 9.
Oh, that's right. Senate Bill 9. I apologize.
Close. The House Bill changed it a bunch.
Yeah. So this is a bill that's built around a lot of housing components.
Yes.
So jump in and tell us about what was in that bill and how it changed up.
So Senate Bill 9 is a housing omnibus is what I'm going to call it. And basically it is over 8 bills that mostly relates to housing. It has everything from residential infrastructure, development districts, to timelines around permitting, third-party inspectors, incentive payment programs, to different types of zoning exemptions, like parking minimums and things like that. But it's over 8 bills. So it's a huge, huge bill. It basically came through local government committee. So in the Senate, it was just one topic. And then it got before the local government committee, before the veto period, which you and I serve on together, we got this bill that has now over 8 other bills. Some that we've talked about before, some that we haven't.
And that have passed, right? Some that we've seen and like, yes, we agree, or we've heard them.
Yes,
some
but
brand
some
new.
never. And so there's been a lot of talk about housing since the interim, and people really have an appetite for doing some substantial changes to our housing policies and funding, but we just haven't seen that yet. So kind of overnight, we get this housing package of bills. But also in this bill, there's an Airbnb provision that we have actually fought for a while, for several years. It often does not, has not actually passed yet. So what it does is it doesn't allow for a local government to adopt policies based on like density, like, hey, for example, a lot of places, their small cities or Louisville have a 600-foot rule. Airbnbs can't be within the same 600 foot from each other. And so that kind of helps you space them out, and it makes sure that a whole neighborhood doesn't become nothing but Airbnbs, and it helps with housing shortages.
And let's back up and just give a little bit of language that sometimes that we use internally that people may or may not be familiar with. So sometimes we will see a good piece of legislation. It could be multiple components, or it could just be one piece, and then something else gets attached to it, right? So there was multiple bills, and then I would call this a poison pill, right? Because this is the one thing in there. It's like, I want to say yes to all this other stuff, but then you went and you put something really sour in there that I don't like.
Right.
And I think the most concerning thing about this bill is that it was very explicit in taking away local control, right? Like that was the overall arching thing to know about this, if you're not going to get down into the weeds about the zoning and how many, but yeah, people want to be able to have control locally of their neighborhoods and the zoning, and to make sure entire neighborhoods and streets don't turn into Airbnbs, which is a legitimate concern. And so there has been a difficult time trying to get this bill across the line on its own, and so trying to attach it to some other stuff.
Well, and it's kind of interesting because this is one that has not finished yet.
Right.
Correct.
And
we're still waiting.
So,
we have time, though. We have time.
So we're going to be there. It's 3:00. We're going to be here a long time today. But it's also one that if that part is something that the governor doesn't appreciate, he would have to veto the entire bill or accept that in order to move forward for housing. So it kind of is a sticky wicket.
Right. So because all these changes were made in a House committee substitute, but it was a Senate bill, the Senate had to, agree to the changes. It did not. The House refused to rescind from its changes. And so what that means is it goes to a conference committee. So now a conference committee of about 5 people from the House, and there's a group from the Senate. They're supposed to get together and meet and then decide what can be worked out to make the bill agreeable to both chambers. If they don't agree, that's when it goes to the free conference committee. And as we've talked about before, that means it's a free-for-all. Anything can be added or changed. So we have how many more hours to get this sorted out?
It's 3:00. We've got till midnight.
Yep. So in that time,
and I really hope we're not here till midnight.
Who knows?
We could be, but I hope we're not.
Because I have to go to work tomorrow morning at 7:30 is what time school starts.
Hey, I'm shadowing a school tomorrow, so I'm very excited. But we're all waking up.
I'm not sure why either one of you are doing anything tomorrow. I always make sure. I mean, I understand you, Tina, you go back to school,
but
I always
wanted the opportunity to shadow the school. I've been trying to do it for a long time,
which is good. That next day, I feel like you just need to be like.
But school is almost over. I only have so many options.
I know. There's only so many.
I will be a zombie, but that's okay. So we have a few hours to figure that out, and I'm hopeful. I proposed an amendment to kind of clean up the language around Airbnbs and local control, and so I'm hopeful that that could be a potential solution, or we'll find another solution.
And you have a good amendment, because your amendment does what I said I would be comfortable with, right? Which is like, hey, if you live in this house that you personally reside in and you want to go away for Derby and you want to rent your house out, make a little extra money, that's fine.
Yeah.
That I could get on board with that. But what they want to do is like, you know, you can just buy up other property and then turn them into Airbnb, and that is not your personal residence.
No restrictions on where they could go, and that could be a really big issue, especially when we think about Derby. Airbnbs are very popular around U of L and Churchill Downs, and we see that with what exists today. There's even a map on Louisville Metro's website where it says short-term rental registry, and you can look at where all the Airbnbs who are registered are, and you'll see that they're heavily concentrated.
I hope your amendment moves, because I think that's a good compromise for like a first step, for everybody to kind of move forward in a way that's fair.
And it's hard because the Airbnb language seems to take away from what we need to do, which is provide more affordable housing.
Yep.
And so it's my understanding that the Airbnbs are a more profitable way to use a house for someone who is an investor, but it does suck up properties that could potentially be
bought by a
housing.
for housing for a first-time homeowner, or at least a long-term rental, right?
So they have their place, but
they do.
It doesn't seem to match the character needed for the bill.
Not at all. Okay, so let's pivot, because we need to go back to public education. That was really, that sucked up a lot of air, which rightfully so, it should. Tina, talk to us about Senate Bill 1 and 4.
And both of these bills are now all the way through the system. We've overridden the governor's vetoes, and they are going to become law. So what I'm telling you won't change. So on the last day before the veto period, and later in the day actually, both Senate Bill 1 and Senate Bill 4 ended up passing. So Senate Bill 1 is the bill that it was constitutional and then unconstitutional, but it's specific to JCPS and giving the superintendent more authority. So it increases the dollar amount of money that they could spend, and it requires the school board to have a 2/3 vote to overrule the superintendent. So more autonomy to the superintendent. Senate Bill 4 had lots of iterations, but what is not in Senate Bill 4 now is there will be no appointed school board members. That was on the table for quite a while. For JCPS, what that means in this bill is that we will get an entirely newly elected board in November of 5 members instead of 7 members. And then there's this other piece that says that if there's an educator who works in another district 100 days or more, they can't be on the school board, which is only a situation right now for a school board member in Fayette County. So Fayette County and JCPS, this is seemingly special legislation. So if there is litigation and it goes to the Supreme Court, we'll see what happens. But, you know, hopefully we can move forward and you know, refresh the school board and gain some trust with the General Assembly, and, you know, not have these ongoing conversations about what needs to be done to JCPS, and we can just support JCPS in all of our supports for all of our kids.
And can we just pause for a second and let's just talk about the little bit of the roller coaster of a ride that it was, because so when the bill initially came out, it was five board members,
right,
2 appointed. So we would so folks would still get to elect local you know, individuals to serve on their board, but then 2 were going to be appointed that had to have X amount of years.
10 years of finance experience.
Of finance experience, which I don't know if that was really like fleshed out as to how do we define that. Then there was the Senate version, because we had 2 different versions, right? The Senate version, they wanted every board member
they
appointed.
Discussed it.
Yes.
It was never written in a bill. So
well,
Senator,
I think it was highly discussed,
yes,
from what I've heard from some members across
one senator had a bill, Senate Bill 114, that did assign all appointed members. So there was an extensive discussion about all appointed. It was never in anything written down that I saw, but
it was discussed.
You know, right.
And then now we ended up with we ended different from where we started, but now we don't even have the two appointed, which I'm not necessarily mad about that, because I know we have issues that we need to address. I wasn't sure if that was the route to take.
Well, because it does not really do anything to increase the capacity of the board to manage the finances.
Right, we have less members now, so now it's just down to 5. So we went from 7 to 5, and then there's no requirement. The Senate took everything out about that kind of financial experience that we needed. So I want to point that out, because I think it can be a real roller coaster here when you think about how something starts and the evolution of the conversations that we have. And then sometimes you look at it and you're like, what did we, I mean, that's what I said to a colleague across the aisle who was involved with this. I said, so what did we actually do here? This doesn't make sense. I don't know that we changed some things, but I don't know that we fixed anything. But time will tell. Right, in all fairness.
And also, when you go back and look at the vote history, like, I might have voted for one version of the bill that then when it got changed, and so did mine. So I voted to also, uphold the governor's veto, and that, failed. And so there's things like that when you're looking at the vote history. There's a lot of different votes that are going to be
I mean, it could be the same bill. And then the piece that we're not getting here is the original Senate Bill 4, and it still had it, was a really great principal leadership program. And so that still is in the bill, but that's kind of how it works around here. Sometimes there'd be wonderful, unanimous, bipartisan legislation, and then different things get pieced on. And it, whether or not it was that poison pill, but, and it's kind of how the legislative process works. The Senate and the House have to debate over getting things passed, and sometimes you just have to move something into other bills, and then there's all this, the sausage is made, right? So how the sausage is made, sometimes I'm not really sure. I'm not privy to a lot of those conversations.
That's right.
There are many conversations. So the sausage will be fully cooked by midnight tonight.
That's right. Is there anything else we need to touch on that we feel like we left out that is important? We don't know if we'll be coming back during the interim and filming anything. Most likely we will not. So this will pretty much this will wrap it. So we hope this has been a great experience for me. I hope it's been a good experience for the both of you as well. This will be the last episode for the 2026 General Assembly session, but we hope to be able to continue to do this for future sessions, and we always are looking for your feedback. So make sure that you tune in for future episodes.